I really find the research, the starting point, really interesting. It's always hard to know what questions to ask. Once you know the proper questions, once you know the problems the users are facing, it doesn't get easier, but it does give you a good direction. The ambiguity is a bit less, but the ambiguity at the start is very interesting. It can be thrilling, but at the same time, it's a very sensitive place to be, and you have to take careful steps to make sure your product goes in the right direction.
Thanks for joining us on the Path to Tech podcast, where we delve into the stories and insights of tech industry professionals and entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Vishal Sapkota. Today, we're thrilled to have Aditya Karki as our guest. He is a product and UX designer with a strong background in problem solving and a keen eye for detail. He is a multifaceted product designer with a passion for creating sustainable solutions. Join us as we explore Aditya's journey, his thoughts on the future of tech, and his valuable insights into product design and UX design. Aditya, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Vishal. It's great to be here.
It's really good to have you on. Why don't we start by talking about just your journey and what it has been like? So can you tell us a little bit about your background and what inspired you to pursue a career in product design and UX design?
Sure. So I actually kind of fell into product design rather than study for it. There's actually no proper pathway to be a product designer, not 5 years ago. So I used to do marketing, and that's what I studied. And while doing marketing, I did sort of realize I wanted to do a bit more than just sell or package stuff. So I looked for other roles that allow me to do that, and then sort of came into UX design, and that's how I kind of fell into product design, which is a more different evolution of UX in some way.
Awesome. Maybe let's talk about what product design is and how did you actually become one? I know you said that there's no bachelor's of product design or a course like that, and you had to sort of pick it up as you went. So yeah, tell us a little bit more about what product design is and what was your journey to become one.
Yep.
Hey, Vishal from Post here. Just wanted to add a note that in this part of the conversation, Aditya and I are talking about not product design, the broader discipline, but digital product design specifically. Back to the conversation.
So I think product design has a career path now, but back then it didn't. So product design is, in digital UX terms, is designing experiences as a product. So by product, I mean anything you have, like so you could have glasses, and the glasses are a product. They solve user problems, and they solve it in a specific way that's predictable, and then people can build upon it. So for product design in digital terms, it's about creating those products that can be scaled, or also sort of gives you a platform to build more products on top of it. So it has different style, but the whole objective of the product is to solve a user problem. That's product, and product designers basically solve the visual aspects of it, but visually they solve a lot of other problems that users have, because primarily product design or UX design in digital is like the primary interface, so the primary touch point. So UX designers actually have a very specific role on solving the human interaction with the product or the solution. So that's product design. So how I came into it is basically solving this same problem for a client. So while doing marketing consulting for a customer, I constantly realized some of the problems that I was trying to solve were not marketing related, more product related, and that's how I kind of studied about product design or UX design. Eventually, that was a successful project, but I didn't really have the proper understanding of how industry works. So eventually, I did a job ready bootcamp, which helped me like crystallize my knowledge, made me understand like how the process works, the industry works, and also gave me like good connections that are like part of my cohort that like stay in contact. We sort of look for jobs and help each other out. So that's how you kind of become one. But you can get a degree now. So
that's awesome. Thank you. So we did talk about product design and what it is. Maybe let's explore that a little bit. You know, from your day to day, what does product design look like from ideation of a product to the delivery of the product? What's that workflow like?
Yep. So right now, my day-to-day is quite focused on ideation and sort of solidifying how the product's going to be built. It's early stages, so we can't do that. But generally, a product designer would ideate one day and then design something the next day, test it out internally or externally the other day, and then maybe even like go and redesign the whole thing when they find some changes or things that have to change. But right now, my role has specifically been about talking to stakeholders, finding out what the problem is, talking to the technical lead, and then finding out how we can solve the problem more effectively, and sort of building that up so we know what we need to design. And then once that's kind of started, then we generally do the standard double diamond design process where we take a problem, we dissect it, and we diverge into various solutions, and then we eventually bring it down to one key problem, and then we try to solve that problem and sort of iterate on that problem to make sure it's sort of hitting the benchmark that we kind of agreed upon. It's always about making sure you have a certain benchmark that you can hit. You need to have like measurable results in terms of like how your product's gonna solve a problem in like a certain amount of time, or is it gonna do it in a certain amount of clicks. There's like always a metric that you have to sort of have when you start doing designs. So yeah, things like that. But right now it's mostly ideation. But otherwise I would be doing the whole end-to-end product design cycle.
Right. And to you personally, which part of that process sort of gives you a kick?
I really find the research, the starting point, really interesting.
Right.
It's always hard to know what questions to ask. Once you know the proper questions, once you know the problems the users are facing, it doesn't get easier, but it does give you a good direction. The ambiguity is a bit less, but the ambiguity at the start is very interesting. It can be thrilling, but at the same time, it's a very sensitive place to be, and you have to take careful steps to make sure your product goes in the right direction.
Yeah, I bet. So the ideation part of the process, I imagine, would be very specific to the product at hand. So, you know, if you're working on a, let's say, agriculture or data platform, then you're sort of working with different constraints, different set of expectations, versus if you're working for something else, for example, designing a virtual assistant or whatever it might be, right?
Yep.
So are there things that translate as you're moving across different projects, or does it feel like it's a new start again and you have to sort of learn a bunch of things in order to get to the level where you're able to understand what stakeholders mean and how to effectively solve their problems?
That's a great question. And like I mentioned before, the process is quite rigid sometimes, so no one really follows the whole process. So about following the process, the design process, everyone uses some iteration of the process of how you can sort of fit into the problem. So to answer your question about like, is it different from product to product and scenario to scenario, it's like absolutely. And I think that is the whole core of the design process. Is the design process is there to actually tackle how different design problems can be. So design problems can be very different. It can be about making sure someone buys a product, which is very different compared to making sure someone knows this equipment is running properly and it's not going to blow up. They're two completely different problems, but
Yeah.
design process can solve it. The process is never going to look the same.
Yeah.
and constraints and business and external things do influence that. But the problem itself is also basically a different starting point. So every problem has a starting point in a different path. So every problem has a different starting point in the design process. So you kind of take that in, and as you get more experienced, you understand where to start and how effectively you can get to a solution. Getting there the fastest is obviously great, but it's always
Comes at a trade-off.
Comes with the trade-off. So there are ways where designers take the time and make sure they use their time and their energy in a specific and very calculated, strategic way to make sure they get to a solution in a more holistic way. But that's theory. When you get to work, it's a bit different. So you have to manage a lot of other work stuff as well.
You throw everything you learn out of your window and then get down to business.
Absolutely.
So, one of the things I really liked about your profile when I was doing a little bit of research about you, we already know each other, by the way, we're friends. And one thing that sort of sprung out to me was the fact that you talked about sustainable design, right? What does that mean to you, and how how would you say that's different from just the general product design?
So, as a point to make about sustainable design is, it's not something I came up with. It kind of follow a few designers that I aspire to, and then they've sort of been using this term loosely in like different contexts, and I've kind of picked that up and then said like, okay, this is like something I think I resonate with and I try to be. So by sustainable design and design solution is what I mean by that is my design process and my thinking is always about like finding consistent and predictable growth or solution. Instead of having flashy solution that might fix it now and then might break, I always like to think it through in a more long and a midterm sort of way. It also comes from the critique of how designs have been in the past. Or you might look at a product like TomToms and then think, oh, TomToms, yeah, you buy one, you give one to someone who needs it. And that sounds amazing, and that was the idea, I guess, to have a sustainable design. But in the end, like a lot of people didn't realize that actually made it worse for people who were getting.
Just before you move on, TomToms, for our viewers, is this the navigation system?
Oh no, TomTom is the shoes that was quite popular in 2010.
Okay.
So they were just slip-ons.
Right.
Quite easy, everyone could wear them. They were about $100 in Australia. And then, so they said if you buy one, they would donate one in Africa somewhere or in a needy place. So that kind of created this market in that place, and wherever they donated, that people who used to make shoes or repair them started going out of business. Sort of, they took over the local economy that was supposed to sustain them, and then sort of made it dependent on their business model, which is not connected to the community. So that kind of led to an unsustainable outcome for the community. For the business, it probably made sense. But now if people go back and look at it and then they think it's a short-term goal. So that's what I kind of mean by sustainable design process and sustainable solution, to make sure you kind of think it through in some way. But obviously you can't really think everything through, and you can only do your best. But I guess the best practice is to actually include things like, is it going to affect the environment, and can we make it more sustainable for the environment or for the community is a key factor.
Awesome. I really love the idea of sustainable design, and sustainability is a buzzword, right? Like there's so many problems that humanity is facing, and being sustainable about the way we build our solutions and cities and communities is something really vital. If you were to assess, the products that you've seen and used, in terms of whether or not they're sustainable,
Yep.
what's your sort of verdict in terms of all the services, products available out there? For example, fast food as a product, it feels really good and it meets your demand for right now, but for your overall health and longevity, is that kind of things that sustainable design also sort of considers?
So fast food is interesting product. It does solve the user's problem, which is customers want food that's consistent and fast when they need it, and then in an accessible price. But if you look at the food itself through a different lens, where you consider factors like health and how much wastage is being created, then you might look at it very differently. So I would say it's not quite sustainable, but it's an example of good problem solving. But it's also an example of good problem solving without taking important things into consideration.
The reason I asked you this question is because this morning, as I was driving to work, I was thinking about how some European countries have implemented basically emissions tax, right? Like if you drive a internal combustion engine vehicle, then to enter certain highways, you'll be tolled more than other vehicles, for example, electric vehicles. Just like that, every industry like fast food, which has downstream implications to society, right? Like the health outcomes, which are exacerbated by the excessive consumption of fast food, for example, heart disease and the like. It's ultimately the society that's paying the price, right? Whether it's through government, social support to health, or whether it's through caring for our sick and unhealthy people. So it's interesting how you said what you said about fast food, where if you consider only the problems that the product was designed to solve, accessible, price, fast, and consistent, then yes, it's a fit for purpose product and there's a perfect product market fit. But if you take a step back and look at it from a holistic way, then your answer might differ.
It's coming from, it's actually a big shift that's happening in the whole business landscape. Everyone's switched to a more, I think it's called a stakeholder economy. I think it used to be shareholder economy. So if you have a share in something, then you are accounted for, your needs and your wants are accounted for. So business is supposed to account for those things. And then I think now they're talking about a more share or stakeholder economy, where a business has stakeholders outside of itself. It could be the local council, it could be the river that is next to it if it's a factory. So they're all basically like stakeholders in the business. When the business grows, the stakes are sort of high for everyone, and then they all get rewarded. But if it's not doing well, then everyone sort of gets impacted. So I think that shift has sort of brought this sustainable solution design into like focus right now.
For those who probably have not been close to product design, what are some of the most popular misconceptions that you think people have about product design?
The first one is it's about making things pretty. It definitely is, but I like to think prettiness or aesthetic value is a byproduct of the function that it's trying to follow. So we do follow certain rules about like how it looks aesthetically and why things are in certain places. They are based on like research from like neuroscientists and cognitive scientists who've kind of found this golden rule of like how many things are the most impactful when they are together on the screen, or how do we perceive things being together. So these things are like deep-rooted things that sort of impact or sort of makes sense to everyone, because it's kind of rooted in like how we live and psychology and evolution and stuff. It goes really deep. which is not what we do. We just trust them and then we sort of implement them, right? Like our job is to implement those rules in a good way and then make sure the business function is still being delivered while we make the user experience better. So that's the first one. And the second one is, I think product design or user UX design is, it shouldn't be just the person's job. I think it's a more collaborative effort. And I actually find myself thinking like designer is probably the wrong sort of word for it. I think my role generally consists of making sure everyone is thinking about the user and making sure I can bring all that in and then sort of make sure like I can inform everyone, remind everyone, the users there, we have these things that we have to think about. So it's more design in terms of like the action, but the role is more like coordinating, advocating for user. So that's the misconception that I think it's more of industry practice of calling ourselves designer that has sort of led us to this. We are definitely designers, but I think there should be something else that defines this role better.
Okay. As a product designer, what's your favorite product?
I think like every designer right now, I would say Figma. Figma is a very well thought out digital product. In terms of real product, I don't really have anything that I really like right now. I've been trying to test like different pens because they've got a very interesting sort of difference in like different pens. But yeah, nothing really in physical. But yeah, my favorite product right now digitally is Figma, like every designer's probably.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I heard Japanese people make quite good pens.
Yes.
I've seen some TikToks about it.
That's probably why I'm into it now.
It's all the feed, man. It's the algorithm.
Yeah. Oh, algorithm.
Yeah. So maybe let's talk a bit about the future. There's so many things and disciplines that are getting disrupted as a result of just the tech landscape in general. So, what's your thought about the role of product designer evolving with the current tech landscape?
That's an interesting question. It's a hard one to say what's going to happen. What I can definitely see is definitely a lot of AI or machine learning, Gen AI. There's a few things, but everyone's using different words, but also using different products to solve basic problems and basic tasks, which is happening in product design. So a lot of designers are using built up Gen AI models to sort of train a persona and then like test out their products. I don't know how valid that's going to be. It'll be interesting to see the results. I haven't tried it. So it's definitely changing. Like there are new tools in the market, right? So that's what it is. But what I can definitely see that's going to happen in my workplace is we're going to use more AI to do like more redundant stuff, but then we're also going to use AI in a way where we can account for it better, so we can make sure we know that was done by AI and that was done by a person, because it gets to a point where you think, oh, okay, so if you're a manager and if you're looking at someone's work and thinking like, oh, did you do this or did the AI do it, right? So there's going to be a point, like there already has been a point where people are already using AI, but also making sure like everyone knows they used the AI for this stuff and they use their own thing for this stuff. And that communication between like teams is definitely going to be interesting, like how everyone does it and how everyone takes it in and sort of makes it work for themselves. It's definitely happening in ours where we're like finding a balance between how we communicate, how we're using it, and maybe even make it into a process that the business can, take it in. So yeah, that's definitely something I can see, but definitely a lot of implication in other fields as well.
Absolutely. Hey, look, I know from my personal chats with you as well, you are a technologist. You love playing with new tech, whether it's a brand new app that came out, or whether it's generative AI, the new models that came out. And I especially recall the fact how you went crazy with ChatGPT when it first came out, and you were hitting the request limits and getting all kinds of weird and wonderful hallucinations. So maybe I do want to explore a little bit about your thoughts of AI, specifically AI, and the modern AI tools that we have. So think, GPT 4.0 and whatever Apple did in their WWDC announcement a couple of days ago. So yeah, what do you think about generative AI, and how do you think society and the way we work and our communities are going to be influenced by this technology?
So the Apple part, I think it's a big conversation, so I might skip that. But they did something very impressive, still digesting that. From my point of view about Gen AI being a tool, I think it's definitely a tool. And then I think all I can say is everyone's learning how to use it, but everyone's, like, people who are making it also sort of learning how to make it better in some way or usable. And then I think at a point all the companies are going to find a way to monetize it the best way they can or get market share. So I think they'll depend on like how the investment sort of goes into, like, does it go into software companies or does it go into NVIDIA or hardware companies? But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they monetize it. And then I think that monetization might be a plateau for Gen AI for a while, because people will want to monetize it and make sure they make the money out of it. But yeah, right now I think everyone's learning and everyone's doing different things. It's very exciting for everyone to really talk about Gen AI, but it's definitely on the rise in terms of hype cycle. So it's hyped more than it should be, but that's not because the technology is limited. That's because our understanding of how to use it is limited. So I think we'll eventually get to a point where our understanding of how to use it is going to be really good and we can use it to its maximum potential. And then we'll come to a point where, like, okay, so this is plateaued now, so we need something else. Okay. So definitely learning for everyone.
So would you say then, after the dust has settled, the impact that Gen AI is going to have is going to be more evolutionary rather than revolutionary?
Yeah, it's a hard thing to say. Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough.
Evolutionary. Yeah, I think that's a good way to think about it. It was promised as a revolutionary product, but like every product, the market sort of consumes it, and I think the market has sort of taken it into its own hands, and I think the market's going to control the product in the end, right? And then we're going to have more things catered towards monetization and how people who made it can get benefits out of it, which would kind of stop the product from like evolving or becoming revolutionary. So yeah, revolutionary promise, but definitely evolutionary.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. The purpose of these organizations like Google and OpenAI and Anthropic and all the others who are building some of these technologies and who own significant amount of compute to be able to do this, obviously their skin is in the game, right? Like, so they would want to hype it up and say that it's this wonderful new magical thing that will solve all your problems if only you buy it from us, right? Yeah. So yeah, I assume the answer is somewhere between what's promised and what the models are currently capable of. Yeah, I think we have similar opinions there. Do you have any conspiracy theories that you like about AI or tech overloads? What's your favorite conspiracy theory?
Not quite conspiracy theory, but I mean, I've always thought these AI models have been around for about 5 or 6 years. They're coming out now, and a lot of people are testing it, which is, I think most people know like that has definitely happened. I've used AI product like 4 years ago to write stuff, and it's pretty good. Not as good as it's now. Well, definitely after a lot of investment. But yeah, I've always thought like these products have been around and they've not been used quite as much. But yeah, it's good to see that they're out. But it's also interesting. Like no one really tried to do it. I think Microsoft tried to bring out a Gen AI model, and then quickly people sort of hacked it in like in the sense like they hacked it in its learning, and then they sort of made it learn like a lot of weird stuff. And
Yeah, I remember this experiment. They released a Twitter bot and people were talking to it, and it soon learned to become the nastiest, most toxic, most abusive and
exactly.
explicit bot. Yeah.
So except for that, no one really came out with another Gen AI type product. So when OpenAI did it, I think it was quite gutsy. It could have gone any other way, but obviously it worked out for them. Good. That's a net good for everyone, because now we know these things exist and we can use it. So my conspiracy is like there's probably other tools or more powerful tools. And I think Sam Altman has come out and said like there definitely is a more powerful tool.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say it's a conspiracy. I think it's a more obvious that we should probably just think about, like, oh yeah, they definitely have tools, but they're not ready, right? So yeah, nothing really weird in terms of conspiracy. Yeah, just they're
Awesome.
more powerful tools.
No, yeah, that's fair enough, right? Like obviously, I was reading a interview of someone who used to work at OpenAI, and they left before GPT 3.5 came out. And in his interview, he mentioned how GPT-4 was also being trained at the time, and GPT 3.5 was sort of being widely used before they announced it to the public. So obviously, these companies are incentivized to drip feed us the bare minimum that will pass as being industry standard, rather than giving us what they have internally, right? Because it is said that whoever figures out AGI the first will have this massive competitive advantage that will probably never go away. Crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's like one of those things. Like AGI for me is just very hard to say, like someone's achieved AGI, because it's very hard to define it. But there's definitely going to be a point where we know we've sort of crossed a level. We're like, okay, there's no coming back from now.
Yeah.
The AI has gotten really good at some things.
Yeah, it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, I mean, it's happened.
Yeah.
Right, but
we're seeing glimpses of it. Yeah. All right, so maybe for next section, what we might do is do a little bit of a rapid fire.
Okay.
How's that sound? So basically, it's going to be quick questions, and I want you to answer in as least amount of words as you can. So here's an example. Describe your design style in one word.
Organic.
Organic. That's good. What's more important, form or function?
Function.
Function. What's the best piece of design advice you've received?
I think balance, data, and expert domain knowledge.
Okay. All right. We can talk about what that means, but let's move on to the next one. What do you think is the most overrated tech buzzword right now?
It's really hard to say. Yeah, no idea.
Right, okay.
I would have said AI, but I'm starting to believe the hype.
Yeah, true. What's common misconception developers have about designers?
So definitely coming back to design as aesthetics rather than function.
Right.
So I think developers think it's all about how it looks, but we think about other stuff too.
Yeah, definitely. It's not just about making things look pretty, right? Another one, what are some frustrating parts of the design developer collaboration process, if any?
So I think there's a few things about Agile that can be better. But obviously, agile is different for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't really say it's true for everyone, but I think the whole process of how developers are looped into how designers are working should be better, and maybe it should be rethought so everyone can be more involved. It obviously depends on the developer, but I would ideally want them to be more involved at the start and also have like some form of design thinking. But at the same time, they could say the same thing about me, which I try, but I think a more balanced approach is needed.
Yeah, more collaboration and breaking down of silos.
Yeah.
Okay, and maybe one more. If you could redesign any product, digital or otherwise, which product would it be, and what would you do with it?
Oh, product. That's a hard one. I mean, I would design a lot of different stuff. I think Facebook groups is a very interesting product that Facebook never sort of capitalized on properly. It's probably biased because I used to run like massive Facebook groups with like 40,000 people, and at a point it was really good and it worked really well, and then suddenly it just stopped working for us. So I feel there's a lot of ways to capitalize or monetize or even like provide more value to the user through those groups, and like how many people you can have in the group, and like how you communicate with the group. But I guess because Facebook is an ad-based platform, they didn't think about it. So I would say Facebook groups.
Okay, all right, awesome. Thank you. The next round of the questions are going to be about just your tips and advice for aspiring designers. So what advice would you give to aspiring designers for them to make a successful start to their careers?
Well, definitely, I think it's important to work on communication skills. That is something I've learned through a lot of experience, and communicating with different level of people is also a skill that's required. That will help anyone, obviously, but designers are definitely more required to sort of communicate the ideas across. It's also important as a designer to be very open-minded.
Aditya, it's been a wonderful pleasure having you on the show today. Thank you so much for sharing your journey, insights, and wisdom with us. Where can our listeners follow you or find you?
You can follow me on really nowhere, but yeah, you can add me on LinkedIn if you have any questions. And yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning into another episode of the Path to Tech podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please give us a review and share it with your friends and colleagues. You can follow Aditya's work on his personal portfolio and, like I said, in his LinkedIn page. Stay tuned for more inspiring stories and insights from tech industry professionals. Until next time, keep exploring and keep innovating. Thank you and goodbye.